If your mind never stops thinking, you are not alone. The real problem is not your thoughts, it's your relationship with them. Most people try to fight their own mind. They sit in silence and expect it to become silent. They get frustrated when thoughts continue to appear, and they assume something is wrong with them. But nothing is wrong with you. The very first thing you must understand is this: your mind is designed to think. That is its function. Just as the heart is designed to beat and the lungs are designed to breathe, the mind is designed to produce thoughts. Thinking is not a mistake, it is not a flaw, it is not a weakness. It is a natural biological and evolutionary process. For thousands of years, the human brain evolved to scan for danger, to predict outcomes, to remember pain, and to imagine the future. It is constantly calculating, comparing, analyzing. Even when you are resting, your brain is active. In fact, it is often most active when you are doing nothing. So when you say, "Why can't I stop thinking?" you are asking the mind to stop doing the very thing it was created to do. The problem is not that thoughts arise. The problem begins when you believe that every thought defines you. You say, "I am anxious." Instead of noticing, there is anxiety. You say, "I am angry." Instead of observing, there is anger moving through me. In that subtle shift of language lies a profound misunderstanding. You have confused yourself with your mental activity. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness in which thoughts appear. Imagine the sky on a cloudy day. The clouds move, change shape, gather, disappear. But the sky itself remains untouched. Thoughts are like those clouds. They come and go. Some are light and pleasant. Others are dark and heavy. But none of them define the sky. In the same way, none of your thoughts define you. They are temporary movements within consciousness. When you understand that thinking is natural, you stop fighting it. And when you stop fighting it, something remarkable happens. The intensity begins to soften. Resistance fuels persistence. The more you try to force the mind into silence, the louder it seems to become. It is like trying to calm water by hitting it. The effort itself creates more disturbance. Consider this carefully. If you try not to think of something, that very instruction becomes a thought. The mind does not respond well to suppression. It responds to understanding. When you observe a thought without judgment, without labeling it as good or bad, it loses its grip on you. It becomes just another mental event, no more significant than a passing sound. You have spent years strengthening the habit of identifying with every thought. From childhood, you were conditioned to believe that your thoughts represent truth. If a thought says, "I am not good enough," you assume it must be accurate. If a thought says, "Something terrible will happen," you react as if it already has. But thoughts are interpretations, not reality itself. They are mental impressions shaped by memory, conditioning, and imagination. The mind is a magnificent instrument, but it is still only an instrument. A knife can prepare food or it can cause harm. The tool itself is neutral. It depends on how it is used. When you become unconsciously driven by your thinking, the mind controls you. When you become aware of your thinking, you begin to use the mind intentionally. This is why the goal is not to eliminate thoughts. The goal is to change your relationship with them. Let the mind do what it does naturally. Let it generate ideas, images, fears, plans, but remain rooted in the awareness behind it. Notice the space between thoughts. Notice that even when thoughts are present, there is something in you that is observing them. That observer is steady. That observer is silent. That observer is who you truly are. When you shift from identification to observation, you experience freedom. The mind may continue speaking, but it no longer commands you. It becomes background noise rather than your master. You realize that silence is not the absence of thoughts, it is the absence of attachment to them. Your mind is not your enemy, it is not broken. It is functioning exactly as it was designed to function. The invitation is not to destroy the mind, but to transcend unconscious identification with it. The moment you recognize that thoughts are simply events passing through awareness, you reclaim your power. You are not here to silence the mind. You are here to remember that you are greater than it. Now let us look deeper into why the mind does not stop, why it keeps repeating the same patterns, the same worries, the same imagined conversations. Much of overthinking is not random. It has a root, and that root is fear. Fear is one of the oldest survival mechanisms within you. Long before modern life, fear kept human beings alive. It scanned the environment for threats. It anticipated danger before it appeared. It remembered painful experiences to prevent them from happening again. In that sense, fear is intelligent. It is protective. It is trying to help you survive. But in today's world, the threats are rarely physical. They are psychological. The fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of not being enough, the fear of losing control. And because these fears are abstract, the mind has no clear action to take. So instead, it thinks, it replays the past, it rehearses the future. It constructs endless scenarios in an attempt to create certainty. When you overthink, you are not simply thinking too much. You are trying to feel safe. Notice what happens when something uncertain appears in your life. Perhaps someone does not reply to your message. Immediately, the mind begins constructing stories. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe they are upset. Maybe I am not valued. The mind is searching for an answer, not because it enjoys creating drama, but because uncertainty feels unsafe. And fear does not tolerate uncertainty. The mind would rather create a negative story than remain in the unknown. At least a story gives the illusion of control. Overthinking is the mind's attempt to control what it cannot control. It believes that if it analyzes enough, plans enough, worries enough, it can prevent pain. But this is an illusion. Thinking cannot guarantee safety. It cannot eliminate uncertainty. It cannot predict every outcome. Yet the mind continues because it is driven by the ancient instinct to protect you. Look closely at your own experience. When do your thoughts become the loudest? It is usually when something matters deeply to you. A relationship, a career decision, your identity. The more you care, the more fear quietly enters the picture. What if I lose this? What if I fail? What if I am judged? And so the mind begins its restless movement. Fear also attaches itself to the past. It says, remember what happened before. Do not let that happen again. So it replays old conversations, old mistakes, old embarrassments. It analyzes them from every possible angle, as if by dissecting the memory it can rewrite history. But the past cannot be changed through repetition. The mind confuses reflection with control. Then it turns toward the future. It projects images of what might go wrong. It prepares arguments for conversations that may never happen. It imagines disasters that may never occur. This is not because you are weak. It is because the mind equates preparation with protection. Yet there is a subtle truth here. The more you try to control life through thinking, the more anxious you become. Because life is not meant to be controlled in that way. It is meant to be experienced. The future has infinite possibilities. The mind selects the most frightening ones because fear demands attention. What if you began to see overthinking not as a flaw, but as a signal that fear is present? Instead of fighting the thoughts, you can gently ask yourself, what am I afraid of right now? Beneath every spiral of thinking, there is usually a simple fear. The fear of being hurt, the fear of being rejected, the fear of losing certainty. When you acknowledge the fear directly, the mind does not need to disguise it through endless thinking. Awareness dissolves exaggeration. When you shine light on fear, it often becomes smaller than you imagined. You realize that much of what you feared was not reality but projection. There is another layer to this. The ego, the sense of personal identity, is also built upon fear. It wants approval. It wants validation. It wants to appear strong and successful. So when something threatens that image, the mind reacts intensely. It begins comparing, judging, analyzing. It tries to restore a sense of importance or control. But you are not the ego's fragile image. You are the awareness behind it. When you recognize that fear is simply an energy arising within you, not a definition of who you are, something shifts. You stop taking every fearful thought seriously. You begin to see the pattern. Thought arises, fear fuels it, more thoughts follow, and the cycle continues. Breaking the cycle does not require suppressing fear. It requires understanding it. Fear is not your enemy. It is a protective instinct operating in a modern world where most threats are psychological, not physical. When you thank the mind for trying to protect you, rather than attacking it for overthinking, compassion replaces resistance. And in that compassion, the intensity softens. You realize that overthinking is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you are trying to feel safe in an uncertain world. The true freedom comes not from eliminating uncertainty, but from accepting it. When you no longer demand absolute control over life, fear loses its dominance and the mind begins to quiet naturally. There is a subtle but powerful misunderstanding that shapes much of human suffering, and it is this: we assume that every thought we think is true. The mind presents an idea, an image, a sentence, and almost instantly we treat it as reality. But thoughts are not facts. They are interpretations. They are mental constructions formed from memory, conditioning, perception, and imagination. Consider how quickly a single thought can change your emotional state. You wake up feeling neutral, and then the mind says, "Today is going to be difficult." Nothing has happened yet. The day has not even begun. But the body responds as if the prediction is already true. Tension appears. Energy shifts. All because of a sentence silently formed in the mind. This is the power we give to thoughts when we do not question them. The mind is constantly narrating. It comments on your appearance, your performance, your relationships. It compares you to others. It predicts outcomes. It judges experiences as good or bad. But this narration is not objective truth. It is filtered through years of conditioning. Every belief you have absorbed from family, society, culture, and past experiences influences the way your thoughts arise. If someone ignores you, the mind may say, "I am not important." Another person in the same situation might think, "They must be busy." The event is the same. The interpretation is different. This alone shows that thoughts are not facts, they are perspectives. Yet most people never pause to examine this. A thought appears, and they immediately identify with it. "I am not good enough. I will fail. Something bad will happen." These statements feel convincing because they arise from within, but the source being internal does not make them accurate. The mind is capable of imagination, exaggeration, distortion. It fills in gaps with assumptions. Imagine watching clouds move across the sky. Some are light and gentle. Others are dark and heavy. If you were to believe that every cloud represented permanent weather, you would constantly panic. But clouds pass. Thoughts are the same. They move through awareness. Some linger longer than others. But none are permanent unless you hold on to them. The difficulty arises when you argue with your thoughts or attempt to suppress them. If the mind says, "I am a failure," and you respond with force, "No, no, I am not," you are still trapped in the dialogue. You are still taking the thought seriously enough to fight it. There is another way. You can simply observe it. There is a thought saying, "I am a failure." Notice the difference. In that small shift, you create space between you and the mental activity. That space is freedom. When you begin observing thoughts, rather than automatically believing them, you see their repetitive nature. Many of them are recycled. The same fears, the same doubts, the same criticisms. They play like recordings. If they were absolute truth, they would not need to repeat themselves so often. Their repetition reveals their mechanical quality. The mind also has a tendency toward negativity. This is not because you are broken. It is because the brain evolved to prioritize potential threats. A positive event may pass quickly through awareness, but a negative possibility receives prolonged attention. The mind assumes that focusing on danger increases safety. In modern life, however, this bias often creates unnecessary suffering. When a negative thought appears, ask yourself gently, is this an objective fact or is this a story? Most of the time, it is a story built upon incomplete information. The mind fills in missing details with imagination. It predicts rejection before it happens. It assumes failure before action is taken. And then you react emotionally to a scenario that exists only in thought. Recognizing that thoughts are not facts does not mean you ignore practical reality. If a thought says, you have an important deadline, that is useful information. But if the thought says, if I make one mistake, everything will collapse, that is an exaggerated narrative. Wisdom lies in distinguishing between functional thinking and psychological storytelling. You do not need to eliminate thoughts. You only need to see them clearly. When clarity replaces blind belief, their emotional intensity decreases. A fearful thought loses power when you understand it as a mental event rather than a prophecy. Notice how thoughts constantly change. A moment ago, you were thinking about something entirely different. Where did that thought go? It dissolved. The next one appeared. This constant movement reveals their impermanent nature. If they were ultimate truth, they would remain fixed. Instead, they flow like a river. You are not the river. You are the awareness witnessing its movement. The more you practice observing thoughts without immediate reaction, the more stable you feel internally. Emotional waves may still arise, but they pass more quickly because you are not feeding them with belief. You are no longer constructing identity out of passing mental noise. The mind will continue producing commentary. That is its nature. But you are free to decide how much authority you give it. When you understand deeply that thoughts are interpretations, not facts, you reclaim your inner balance. And in that realization, the mind begins to lose its power to disturb you.